Hey guys, today I want to answer a question that some people might have. Maybe you've heard it before, and that's this. Did Jesus ever talk about gay marriage? That's one of the arguments you hear. Well, Jesus never said anything about gay marriage, about homosexuality. So I just want to answer that really quickly today. But first of all, I want to remind you to get my book if you haven't already. This book will help your church leaders understand what they're supposed to do in this age of the LGBT agenda. How are we supposed to deal with this in our churches? So if you're a pastor, your church leader, get it. If you're a lay person, get it and read it and give one to your pastors, to your elders, whoever you got in your church, because it's so necessary. You can buy it on Amazon or go to my website, benhammond.org, and there's information there. Email me if you want it directly from me signed. So today the question that we have is, did Jesus talk about gay marriage? Now, the answer is a definitive, not really, but sort of, okay? The question, the reason people even have this question is because the thought is that if Jesus didn't say anything about gay marriage, then we can't say anything about it either, right? But I think that we need to consider that there's a lot of things that Jesus never discussed. He never said anything about carjacking. He never said anything about jaywalking. He never said anything about going 70 and a 55, right? He didn't even tell us whether we should or shouldn't get a vaccine. Just because Jesus didn't specifically mention something doesn't mean he didn't have an opinion on it, or he wouldn't have an opinion today, or that doesn't necessarily mean something that's right, or something is right, or something is wrong. So, by the way, we could actually use that same argument to argue the other way about it too, because the homosexual act is so unnatural. You would think that if it was okay, that we might expect for Jesus to say something about that, to say, that's so unnatural, it doesn't fit, it just doesn't work, but it's okay for you. If we're going to use a line of reasoning, think that we really can't believe anything unless Jesus specifically said it, then we would have to go the other way too with it. So did Jesus specifically say anything about gay marriage or anything about homosexuality? My argument to that is that Jesus spoke in generalities. He didn't specifically talk about a lot of things today. For example, he didn't say, "Thou shalt not mow down thy neighbor's prize rose bushes," but he did say that you should love people. He didn't say you shouldn't go to X-rated websites, but he did rebuke people's wandering eyes. So he didn't say anything specifically about gay marriage, but what he did do was he told us what marriage actually is. And if anything doesn't fit into that definition of marriage, then we can't call it marriage. So I just want to look at what he said here. We are going to go to Mark chapter 10, verse 4. What's going on is some people have come to Jesus and they're asking him about this issue of marriage. And so their question is actually in Mark 10, 2. The Pharisees came and asked him, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife?" Testing him. So this was a hot topic in Jesus' day like it is today. What's this issue of divorce? And again, remember, the question here is not gay marriage. The question is marriage. Can a man divorce his wife for any cause, for whatever reason? Is it okay to do this? So what Jesus did here is he did not offer an opinion. He didn't align himself with either side, yes or no. He simply went all the way back to the issue of marriage itself. So continuing on here, he says in verse 3, he says, "What did Moses command you?" Tell me what Moses said. They said, "Moses permitted a man to write a certificate of divorce and dismiss her." And so just talking about history, people are getting divorced. And so Moses said, okay, you don't just get divorced for any reason. If you're going to do it, there's certain things you have to do, trying to keep this obviously at a minimum. And so Jesus then goes on to describe that it was because of the hardness of their hearts that Moses did that. But then he gets to the important part in verse 6. He says, "But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate." So in a sense, what Jesus is saying here is, it doesn't really matter what Moses said. It doesn't matter what aside I would just take, because I think you should be able to get divorced, you shouldn't. When they were asking him about marriage, he went back to the definition of marriage. What is it? Uh, and this was his answer. It's one man and one woman committed together for life. And the thing that breaks it, obviously, is death. And we see that in the Bible. So it didn't matter what Moses or anyone else said. So the Supreme Court comes along, and the famous Obergefell decision, which I've talked about already here on this channel. And this was a quote from the Obergefell decision that essentially invalidated state laws that did not allow gay marriage. This is a quote. It says, "The history of marriage is one of both continuity and change, which has evolved over time." Let me read it again. "The history of marriage is one of both continuity and change, which has evolved over time." In other words, there's a lot of things that have been the same about marriage all through time, but there's also been a lot of things changed. So maybe at one time it was, marriage for life. Well, that's kind of changed in our society because, people get unhappy with things and they want to be able to move on. Or maybe, we used to think marriage is between one man and one woman. Well, now maybe two women, two men. Maybe you can mix it all up a little bit. Maybe it can be between two men and two women. So the idea the Supreme Court had, and terribly so in my opinion, is that marriage has changed over time. But that's not the way Jesus saw it. This is the way Jesus saw it. He says marriage has always been one man and one woman for life. And there's nothing that you can do to change that definition. So their topic that day was about divorce. And Jesus was answering this. What he was telling them is, no, you're not supposed to get divorced. That's not what marriage is. It's one man and it's one woman, and they're put together for life. They are one flesh now. You cannot separate that. So his answer to them was, no, divorce is wrong, just simply by going back to the beginning and telling them what marriage actually was. Let's say, what does that mean for gay marriage? Well, it means exactly the same thing that it means for divorce. It's not one man and one woman for life. Gay marriage does not fit into that. Any sex outside of marriage doesn't fit into that because that is something that is supposed to be in the marriage bond. So anything other than one man and one woman for life is outside of God's original definition of what it is, and we can't change his original definition. So the simple answer to the question, did Jesus ever talk about gay marriage? Specifically, no, not that we have, not that I know of, but he did define marriage. So he didn't have to say anything about gay marriage. If marriage is one man and one woman for life, anything outside of that is not marriage. So there we go. There's our answer. Again, get the book and Inevitable Collision if you can. God bless you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.